Mystery Yarn by Robert McCloskey, Part 1. One fall afternoon, Homer was whistling a little tune and raking up leaves from Uncle Ulysses' front lawn and trying to decide whether to ask for his pay in cash or in doughnuts from Uncle Ulysses' lunchroom. He'd just finished raking the leaves into a neat pile at the curb and was about to go find a match when the sheriff turned the corner in his car. "Hi, Sheriff! Do you have a match?" shouted Homer. "Sure thing, Homer," said the sheriff as his car jerked to a stop. "That's a right smart pile of leaves you got there. Burnin' leaves. Sure smell nice, don't they?" he said as he struck a match on his seat and lit the pile. "Yep, Sheriff, and burnin' leaves always make me think of football in school," said Homer. "And the county fair?" added the sheriff. "That'll be along in a couple weeks. I'm going to exhibit my chickens again this year. My white leghorns took a blue ribbon last fall." "Well, I'll be seeing you, Homer," added the sheriff. Then he flicked a bit of ash off his sleeve, because he had his best Sunday suit on, climbed into his car, and drove to the end of the block. Homer watched while the sheriff got out of his car, straightened his tie, and started up Miss Terwilliger's front steps. Miss Terwilliger, as any one from Centerburg can tell you, is one of the town's best known and best loved citizens. She runs knitting classes, and in years past has taught almost every woman in Centerburg how to knit. She is a familiar sight on Sundays, holidays, and at social functions, dressed in a robin's egg blue dress, which she had knit years ago when she first started her knitting classes. In fact, Sundays and holidays did not seem complete without Miss Terwilliger in her robin's egg blue dress. You might think that a dress so old would look worn and out of style, but not Miss Terwilliger's. After church or after a party, she changes to a house dress of simple cotton print and carefully hangs her favorite blue knit in a closet to save it for the next occasion. The matter of style doesn't bother Miss Terwilliger. If short skirts are the latest thing, she merely unravels a few inches from the bottom of the dress, and the dress looks like the latest thing. Of course, Miss Terwilliger saves the robin's egg blue yarn that she removes, for, as she has so often remarked, longer skirts will be in style again in a year or two, and then I'll have the right yarn to knit a few inches back onto the bottom of the skirt. Miss Terwilliger is a very clever woman, and besides being an accomplished knitter, she is a wonderful cook. Her fried chicken is famous for miles around Centerburg. It is only natural for such a woman to have many admirers, and two special ones, the sheriff and Homer's uncle, Telemachus. As long as Homer could remember, the sheriff had gone every Thursday, and Uncle Telemachus had gone every Sunday to call on Miss Terwilliger and eat a chicken dinner. And it was no secret that both the sheriff and Uncle Telemachus wanted to marry Miss Terwilliger. She liked them both, but somehow she just couldn't seem to make up her mind. Homer remembered that he had another job for this afternoon, so he poked the fire some more to make it burn faster. When the fire was out, Homer put away the rake and hurried off to Uncle Telemachus's house. Homer's Uncle Telly lived all by himself in a trim little house near the railroad. Homer's mother always said, "It's a shame that Uncle Telly had to live alone, because he would make an ideal husband for some fine woman like Miss T." Aunt Aggie would always answer, "But I don't know how any fine woman could put up with his carryings on." By carryings on, Aunt Aggie meant Uncle Telly's hobby of collecting string. Yes, Uncle Telly was a string saver, and he had saved string for years and years. He had quite a lot of it, too. And every Thursday afternoon he would take all of the pieces of string that he had collected during the week and wind them on his huge ball out in the garage. That was one of Homer's jobs on Thursdays, helping Uncle Telly wind string because Uncle Telly had had a bit of rheumatism of late. You see, the ball of string was getting too large to wind without a lot of stooping and reaching. Uncle Telly greeted Homer at the door. "Hello, Homer. We've got a lot to wind today." "That's good, Uncle Telly. I brought a few pieces from home, too." They went out to the garage, and as Uncle Telly looked at his ball of string, he said with pride, "Another 1/4 inch, and it'll be 6 feet across. Biggest ball of string in the world." "Well, I don't know, Uncle Telly," said Homer. "Freddie's been helping the sheriff wind his string down at the jail, and he says the sheriff's ball of string is just about 6 feet across, too." "Huh! I heard tell that the sheriff winds his string loose, so the ball looks bigger." "Mine's wound tight," said Uncle Telly, poking the ball, "and it's a lot longer than the sheriff's ball of string ever'll be." "Yep, I guess you're right," said Homer, and he began winding the string while Uncle Telly tied the pieces together in double knots. "Wind it tight," reminded Uncle Telly. "Don't let anybody say that my string isn't wound right. I'll have none of those loose, sloppy sheriff kind of winding on my ball of string." Just as Homer and Uncle Telly were about finished, there was a knock on the garage door, and when Uncle Telly opened the door, there stood the sheriff and Judge Shank. "Good day, Telemachus," said the judge. "Howdy, Telly," said the sheriff, trying to peer over Uncle Telly's shoulder and see the ball of string. "Howdy, Judge," said Uncle Telly, and scowling at the sheriff, he said, "I didn't expect you'd be calling on me on a Thursday afternoon." "Huh, Telemachus," said the judge. "I just happened to stop in the knitting shop to drive my wife home when I met the sheriff. As you know, Telly, or Telemachus, it is necessary to cut down expenses at the fair this year, and we cannot afford to have the trotting races that we always have. The sheriff, who like myself is on the fair board, and who, like yourself, is a string saver, has suggested that he and you, Telemachus, enter into an event that could be held on the racetrack and provide the diversion that the trotting races have." "Yep," interrupted the sheriff. "I challenge you to unroll your string around the racetrack just to prove once and for all that I've got more string than you have." Yes, to put it bluntly, that is the situation, Telemachus. I appeal to your sense of county pride. Do not spurn the offer, and then, of course, the winner will receive a prize." "I'll do it, by Zeus," said Uncle Telly. "We'll see who's got the most string, Sheriff. Your ball might be just as big as mine, but it ain't wound tight." And to prove his point, Uncle Telly gave his ball a kick and almost lost his balance. "Very well, gentlemen," said the judge. "I shall—" "Wait a minute, Judge," interrupted Uncle Telly. I'll do it on one condition." Uncle Telly was noted for driving a hard bargain, and Homer wondered just what it would be. "If I win this here contest, the sheriff has to promise to spend his Thursday afternoons out of town and give Miss Terwilliger a chance to make up her mind to marry me." "Well," said the sheriff, "in that case, if I win, you'll have to leave town on Sundays and give Miss Terwilliger a chance to make up her mind to marry me." "It's a deal," said Uncle Telly, and the sheriff shook hands for the first time in years, just to clinch the bargain, of course. "Very well, gentlemen," crooned the judge. "I shall judge this contest, and at our earliest convenience we will draw up a set of rules pertaining— Good day, Telemachus." "Goodbye, Telly," said the sheriff. "Sorry I can't stay, but I've got an appointment." Uncle Telly slammed the door on the sheriff and went back to tying knots. "We'll see," he said, and pulled the next knot so hard that he broke the string. Golly, Uncle Tilly, said Homer, that's going to be a swell contest. I hope you win the prize. Humph! Prize or no prize, we'll see who's got the most, said Uncle Tilly, and Miss Terwilliger will get a chance to make up her mind. The woman certainly can cook, sighed Uncle Tilly, with a dreamy look. Then he busied himself with his knots and said, Now mind you, Homer, wind it tight.